Peace, peace, peace. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's in the region, outside of the region. Welcome. My name is Brother Lee. This is Brother Eric, and we're back for another episode of CHUCG TALK. That's sort of like a game show.
Yeah.
So welcome. CHUCG TALK, your favorite payday show. I hope y'all got paid today because I didn't, and I'll be taking it up with my boss when I get that chance. Welcome to your favorite payday show. As you know, as we've been doing so far in our recent episodes, before we talk about our topic for today, we always try to open up with the joke. Our first episode 1, Brother Eric did a joke. Not a lot of good feedback. I'll be honest, not a lot of good feedback from me or anybody else that heard the joke.
You can't win them all.
And last week, a lot of feedback really blew up our inbox about the joke that I put out there.
It's definitely not true.
And it came. I checked. If you look at it, I checked.
Okay.
Yeah, from a bunch of folks all across the world. And this week we're back again, and we're going to let Brother Eric lead us with another. Go ahead, Brother Eric.
So before we do that, I just want to acknowledge first, man, this is our third episode, right?
It is, episode 3.
In each one of our episodes, before I get into a joke, it might sound like a joke. All of our episodes, we managed to wear different color Black Hill Institute shirts.
Yeah, I don't even like where you're going with this. I don't think I like where you're going with this.
I mean,
yep, I ain't feeling it.
Were you looking? Were you like? Did you see how?
And for our joke of the day.
Okay, all right, all right. So, joke of the day. I got an interesting joke, and we'll see, right? So, Brother Lee.
Yes, sir.
Lee Jordan, sir.
That's me.
I got a question for you. All right, my question is, what is the best way to practice safe eating?
The best way to practice safe eating. If I had to guess, I don't think it'll be the answer only because it's too easy for it to be the answer. But if I had to guess, I'd say something maybe
I got you.
Diet, not right. Okay.
No, it's not your diet. The best way to practice safe eating is to use a condiment.
Use
a condiment, like a condiment. Okay. I thought it was fun.
Is our show PG? Is it?
Y'all.
Is it?
Okay. All right. That was funny, right?
Company.
Okay. Y'all know it was funny a little bit. Just a little. Okay.
When I was telling you about the bad feedback, that's what I was. Forget it.
Okay.
You ain't got it because you always turn around and talk to me about it. That's cool. Okay. So there you have it, folks. Condiments. That's how you practice safe eating. Please send us feedback again. You know what I mean. Please don't use the curse words this time.
Send us good jokes too.
Lastly, so that's our joke for the day. Thank you, brother. We really appreciate you really coming through for us.
Okay, thank you.
Now our topic for today. I'm really excited to talk about it. Our topic for today is going to be black wealth. Black wealth, right? And I'd say it's a very commonly used word. Wealth in general, I think it's a very commonly used word. I think wealth is associated with money a lot of the time, and I think wealth is a lot more complex than for it to just be about finances. So before we jump into our bell questions, I wanted to first spend some time chatting with you all and sharing from our perspective. What is black wealth? What is it, right? We hear it all the time. What does it mean to even be wealthy? What is wealth, right? But what is black wealth? So if you want to start, I don't mind starting, but if you want to...
No, you can start.
So this is something that's been sitting on my soul. So I've been excited to get this out. But wealth, right? I'm not a big fan of wealth being money. Okay, I generally think wealth means stability in all areas. That's the best way I can describe it. I think that's what it means to be wealthy, to be able to be stable and to be able to pass down your stability and continue it, and your stability lives long after you. Okay, and I mean, when I say stability, I mean mentally healthy, right? I mean financially healthy, right? I mean physically healthy, right? I mean careful about what you're eating, careful about what you're putting in your mind. I think all that creates wealth, right? Now, in the in a different sense, folks, of course, see it as accumulating money over time, being able to pass money down to your family, being able to continuously, invest your money or use it for different projects that might give community different jump starts on different projects, which is all I agree with. But I also think that if we can pass down money, if we could pass down habits, if we could pass down ideas, if we could pass down legacies, then I don't understand why wealth will be limited to just money. I think it should be the whole scale of what would be your community, what would be your family, you know what I mean, or what your last name is associated with.
So
that's my take.
To me, I think, like you're speaking to like the social and cultural aspects of wealth, right? Things that we don't typically talk about, and things that I think in particular Black people and other people of color actually have a ton of, but not necessarily a ton of, economic wealth.
Yes.
And so when you talk about like the political wealth and being able to share culture, right? Like share our ideas, our artifacts, all these things. But I'll take the spin of really being like clear about the stuff that you didn't talk about, which is the economic piece, right?
Yeah.
The political, economic, and I guess social piece as well. And when thinking about wealth, you're talking about assets, right? Being able to grow assets. And in the case where you have more assets than you have liabilities. And I'm not an economist by any means, but when I think about wealth, there are major types, if you will, or ways in which people can build power or wealth. We talked about power last week. Maybe we'll do a show on power at some point, but particularly Black power. But when we talk about Black wealth, and I know we're going to go into it and talk about food, but when I think about Black wealth, I'm also thinking about the land, property, and means of production that we have. Not because I'm necessarily a stone cold capitalist, because I'm not by any means, but if we're going to have any fighting chance to actually be competitive, if you will, or operate in the same space and have our social, cultural, and other aspects be welcomed, we have to amass the types of resources like land, property on that land, other assets, including investments and stuff like that. Absolutely. That allows us to build based on those things neutrally, but also that come from us and using it in a way that works for us. So
that's right.
That's kind of what I think about without overcomplicating it. We can talk more about this, and I'm definitely down to hear people. Please comment, leave your comments about Black wealth, give your thoughts about it too.
That's a big vehicle, man. That's a big vehicle, and there's a lot of maintenance that goes into it too. Just thinking about it, really building wealth, right? So yes, that's our perspectives on Black wealth, and we please encourage you, as Brother Eric shared, send us something if you don't like what you hear. You have a different opinion, please share it with us. No judgment. We're just looking for folks to really chime in and
healthy dialogue.
Share. Healthy dialogue.
So look, can I actually say this? There's a good person, who I know, the sister named Zachary, who does work in DC, Dreaming Out Loud. We'll talk about we need Black wealth, and the way to do that is by actually using a reparations frame, because we don't have Black wealth, because our land has been stripped from us, our intellectual property has been taken away from us, our physical property has been taken away from us, and largely the thing that the Bible talks about being the head, not the tail, and all of that, we actually all the other stuff. We the tail, we beneath, we're all these things. And so, I think it's an interesting dialogue, and I think it should be talked about more. But I think from her perspective that there isn't a ton of Black wealth. I think that the way that you do that, in many ways, like historic examples like Black Wall Street in Tulsa and Black Wall Street in Durham and Black Wall Street in other places around this country, folks act legit, not only built wealth by owning enterprises, but actually, here's the big piece. Here's the kicker. The difference between a poor community and a wealthy community is the concentration of dollars. Dr. Claude Anderson talks about this, and that African peoples have to be able to put our money together, have the type of enterprises that we need for ourselves, but also to have clients and provide goods and services to other people outside of our community. But it makes me think about like that in particular. We have to have all those things, and we have to be able to control those things, right? And so, and even again, from my standpoint, when we talk about food, one way to amass black wealth is to be able to have the types of acreage that we need, to have the type of, you know what I mean, the types of resources that we need to build strong enterprises that not only prosper themselves but help to build other ones too. So anyway,
no, that's real. That's real, man. I wish we can really dive more in about it. I generally think that's the truth, man. That's really the truth. And before we jump to the belt questions, I wonder, right, about the wealth, or about the I'm tanking because I'm losing my question. I had it when you were talking. No, you good. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. I had a really good question though, but it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. But in the meantime. What that mean?
Is it time for bell questions?
It's time for bell questions.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah, you can say it.
Yo, no, it ain't a bell question. Okay. I'm excited that this time around we got bell questions from other people, man.
Yeah.
Dang, I'm happy about that. Yeah. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And folks are following the show. Folks are asking questions. So we want more questions, more bell questions. We want to be able to tame this thing a couple times. So thank you all for sending in your bell question. I'm ready for bell questions. I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
I got you.
So I'm excited.
Do you want to do our first one from Maria? Do you want to explain or say our first one from Maria?
Sure. So Sister Maria at Farm Alliance in Baltimore asked us a question, one of the bell questions. She asked us, Brother Lee and myself, to respond to the question
how do we analyze
what is our analysis? Sorry, what's our analysis of the different approaches to food distribution during this time of COVID-19? I thought that it was a pertinent question. I think it was a powerful question.
Yeah.
And if I can just give a quick opinion, and I'll definitely pass it over to Brother Lee. But here's my thought, right? So I think what Maria is alluding to, or at least the question that Maria is asking, is the tendency, essentially, or what I've seen is the tendency of folks giving out food or distributing food on the ground, but also government really pushing this idea of getting out boxes of food or what have you to folks. And granted, Black Youth Institute, along with our partners, Elevate Baltimore, Cherry Hill Development Corporation, Restoring Inner City Hope, and Youth Resiliency Institute, and other people who are doing work. We've been doing that on the ground, sharing meals. But ultimately, what those types of approaches have done is solidify and continue to codify the idea of food access, or centering food access and food aid, rather than moving toward utilizing other approaches, right? So, for example, what we're doing essentially is perpetuating the same thing that we actually are in existence to fight against, right? So one big aspect of food apartheid is that, people come to our communities or are given goods to bring to our community to give to people. That still shows the corporate control of the food, because we're getting food from, organizations who are providing food to us, who are getting it from wholesale, who boxing it, all well-intentioned, but food aid does not change the power dynamics.
There you go.
It gives people food for the day.
There you go.
But people have been given food for the day. In fact, people have been given food around the world and saying that that's how we're dealing with quote-unquote hunger. But we're not talking about the fact that while people are not hungry anymore, people still don't have power.
Yeah.
And so those approaches only continue to codify and perpetuate the idea that the way to help, rather than mutual aid, right? But the way to help is to grab goods from those who have it to bring it here, rather than build the power of the people on the ground to do for ourselves. So with that being said, it creates an environment, not to say that you can't do it, but essentially what happens and has continued to happen for generations, people get used to that. Right? Like, that's the approach. Poor people get food not from our own hands, but from the hands and the benevolence of others.
Right.
But the problem is that what happens when the benevolence is done? What happens when people stop giving us food?
That's true.
Are we in a position where we can control our own destiny? No. So that's the problem that I see, and I think that largely city government, state government has not put money into actually building infrastructure for communities to control our own food. Mm-hmm. Say, giving money to build infrastructure for urban farms, giving money for folks to be able to establish food co-ops and food efforts that are owned by the people, right?
Yeah.
And those are things that haven't been done pre-COVID, during COVID, but we are not only moving in that direction, but we need leaders and we need public servants to actually move away from just perpetuating the market-based solutions, right? Mm-hmm. Right? How do we go to the supermarkets and the corporations to feed the people rather than insourcing the help and having the people feed ourselves? That needs to stop.
Yeah.
We have to balance out and eventually get rid of food aid as the only way to feed Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree, man, and I think it's a few things that really jump out to me. What I'm learning about a lot of the food models is that, one, they're community-based food models. Now, there are several folks, of course, making contributions and being connected to the work and doing the actual groundwork. So I don't want to exclude them. But I was happy. I've been excited to see actual organizations that are from the community they're in step up to the front of the line in the middle of this conflict, right? And really, and the thing is, what really lifts me up is that, like, there's nobody who knew it was coming, right? There's folks who've been willing to not only risk their time, their resources, and their lives to step to the front and figure it out. You know what I mean? So not only are you out there, but you're out there figuring it out, coming to a solution, and then executing. I think that's real heroism, if you will, or heroic, if you will. And I think that's one of the major things that stood out to me. A lot of the models I've been seeing have what I also love about them is that they've been giving out a lot of food, and they've been sharing a lot of resources. But I've also seen, like I said, more than food. I've seen toiletries. I've seen cutlery. I've seen a lot of things. A lot of folks making sure that a lot of families are okay during this time. So that's a blessing. However, I also agree with the perspective on food aid, and I generally have always thought that giving folks food or giving folks anything. And not providing them with the resources to learn how to do it themselves, or where they can go to learn how to do it themselves, or at least teaching a person to teach them, or any of those scenarios. I think that we get stuck in this really dependent stance, right? I think with the food aid we get stuck.
Cycle.
Pretty much lean on each other, yeah, and it's almost like the hamster wheel, right? And you're essentially putting that. We talk about it all the time. You're putting a Band-Aid over a ruptured artery, right? The problem ain't we just need food, right? Because I mean, we got food. We can go to a place to find food. If that was the case, our problem would have been solved a while ago, right? The problem is bigger than food. The problem is in our education. The problem is in our resources. The problem is in our network building, our action network building. It's a lot more areas that have to be maintenance. On this whole vehicle for it to really be sustainable and independent. But what I really love about COVID-19 is that, like, we got caught red-handed, right? It's like you almost got caught with your hand in the cookie jar. Yeah, you got it, right? Yeah, so now I know everything, or we know everything we need to work on as a country. You know what I mean? As individuals, you know what I mean? I even said that in the earlier episode that it's been forcing us to face ourselves as individuals and most of all as a community. I think it's so big. I know that's like I'm harping on it, but I think it's so big that community stepped up. I love community. I'm from community. So to see each other taking care of each other, it just reminded me of a time, you know what I mean, when I was sitting on the step, you know what I mean, as a kid. So that's our first question. I want to jump to the next one while we got time. Okay. Our next question. This is from Jordan Raxon 909, our friend from Instagram, DM'd us last Wednesday. How can we build black wealth with black land and food sovereignty? How can we build black wealth with black land and food sovereignty? And that's a good question because a lot of people ask that. You know what I mean? It's cool to build sustainable, but I guess they want to be clear or they need clarity on what sustainable includes.
We've gotten that question a lot.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Absolutely.
You want to tackle that one first?
I can go first. I can go first, and then I'll let you follow. But building, I think Well, I want to give a partial perspective because really I'm zoomed in right now on the land piece. And I generally don't think folks, and I said this before as well, but I generally don't think folks understand the value of land, right? And the work we do is targeting food and cultural-based foods and targeting land. And people understand the food when the question is asked. They understand why we go after the food. They understand why we're growing our own foods. They understand why we're teaching folks how to grow their own foods. All of those things that are working in that area, they understand. However, when I always talk about land, folks don't even begin to understand, like, you know what I mean, that the land itself is a value of its own. Not the house, right? Not the garage, not anybody that might be on the land. The land itself has its own value. Right. And every land of that nature has its own value. And I even still struggle with the idea of us being able to own land, right? Like to be able to personalize something so natural as our own. Right. That's interesting to me. But even still, understanding the system we're in, it takes me all the way back to all the black farmers that were pretty much robbed out of their own profits and profits that would have been back in the community by different laws that were targeted for them, you know what I mean, to really make their businesses collapse, make them not be able to produce and make them fold.
Black labor, white wealth. Black labor, talk about it.
Yes.
Legislation. I'm sorry.
And that also, so earlier, I know I tanked earlier on the question, but my question was, and I wanted to put this on the back end of what you were saying in black wealth, but you know, how many dollars, and this is something I encourage folks to think about, just how many dollars stay in your community? How much of your money stays in your community?
Dr. Claude Anderson in the black community says the dollar circles around 0 times.
Crazy.
So when you get money, we go to somebody else's store to spend it for the most part, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or if we spend it with a black person, there aren't enough black manufacturers because the money, so the money eventually goes out of the community, right. Like where other racial groups, actually the dollar stays in its own community more times. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. So anyway, I'm sorry. But yeah.
No, so I was just saying, I think acquiring land, and land as a resource is its own vehicle to black wealth. I think that, and I want to be clear, this is not new. This is not new. This has been a vehicle, right? This is just me getting back to what we already knew. So this has been a vehicle. Folks have been growing on land. Folks have been renting their land and sharing their land. Land is so big of a resource, and so big of an asset that I think sometimes folks with not understanding or not being educated on how much of an asset it is, I think it kind of loses some of the value when we finally decide to make a move on it. But and that's my perspective.
You know, and I think it's intentional too, right? When we're in school, we're not taking classes where they're teaching us the value of land, how to take care of land, and not only, I guess kind of like what land is good for and understanding about investments and stuff like that. But in addition to that, when we learn, we're not tapped into the networks that we need. So I'll get back to the question. I'll return to the question. And for me, I think the way that we move toward building black wealth with black land and food sovereignty is by, one, creating a network that's very clear, where people are clear about what aspects we want to take on. So, for example, with what you talked about, being able to acquire land and setting up enterprises that actually are that meet the needs of community, which builds in the market that allows you to build income. But in terms of building wealth, having these various revenue streams, and in particular being able to have contracts with landscape architects and folks like that we're able to actually get contracts and reinvest that community so that it circles, right? Because again, that's the difference between income and wealth. How is how is it circling, right? The other thing is building community institutions like co-ops, right? And food co-ops, other co-ops, and for those who don't know, co-ops are organizations that or entities, actual businesses that are owned by the people who actually have an equal share within it. And that the revenues go to the people or to that community. So in the case of a food co-op, that's a consumer-owned co-op. So the people who use it are the people who own the business. So that helps to build wealth because money, you get to control where the money goes, and a little bit of profits that go, we can actually reinvest that in other things. And I mean, there are other ways, but I know we're running out of time. I think we should have definitely more time to think about this. But I think there's a way for us to think about how to build institutions and how to create the type of ventures that we have on the land that allows us to build wealth collectively. And that's the big thing that I want to say. Collective wealth is what we're talking about, right? When we say black wealth, you're not just talking about the one black person who get money and leave, but being able to actually collective, you know, and the one way to do that is to see ourselves as a collective and building collective structures like co-ops that actually are counter to capitalistic structures that keep that lack of money circulation in place. We got to break that up by creating businesses that counter that. So
and I think you said something that folks should really snatch out of there is that we got to see ourselves as a collective before any of that can happen,
absolutely.
Right? It has to be looked at, understood that way before any of that can happen. Absolutely. So we'll jump into our last bell question, and this is from.
Rocky, Sister Rocky asked us this last question.
Yeah, so this is from Rocky. Her question to us was, have people been interested in farming since COVID-19? This is a really good question, Rocky, and I'm really grateful you asked this question. It's up to you if you want to.
I'll be sure. I'll say yes. I mean, yes, people have been expressed interest, and I actually think that to the last question about how we build wealth, getting people interested in our own selves, in our own history, in building ourselves as a collective, and an excitement and interest in farming because we realize that we're in dire straits. Because we're in a situation right now where folks want to save money, where folks want to be connected to our blackness because we ain't got nothing else. Yes, people want it, and that's exactly what I think we need to be building off of.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll be quick as well, but I think before COVID-19, this is just my personal opinion, but I think before COVID-19, a lot of folks prioritize convenience. And I think with that, you become comfortable and you become vulnerable. I think a lot of people forget that like when you become dependent on going to the grocery store all the time, when you become dependent on, BG&E having the lights on, when you become dependent on folks, you have a rug that can be pulled from under you now, right? So I think that's one of the major things. And I've had so many folks who have come to me, and for folks who don't know, at Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden, which is CHUG. That's the what is it called? Abbreviation for it. That's what I was trying to say. That's the abbreviation for it. But we rent out our garden beds for $20 annually. Folks can come on up, do an application, rent your bed, grow your own food. But I've had so many folks who have sent me applications. I've had folks who have called my phone directly. Since COVID. I have folks who have called my phone directly and have been, just asking about the beds. And last year, that wasn't the case. Yeah. And this is the last piece I'll say, but I've said this on the show, so I hope folks who have been staying tuned in with us remember. But I always say we can't, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink, right?
Unless what?
You can't make him drink unless you give him peanut butter.
Unless you give him peanut butter.
I think COVID-19 is peanut butter. I think COVID-19 has been peanut butter, and I think we forced to look at ourselves and we forced to make a different move and to be more independent, knowing that something like this can actually happen. Yeah, so that's our bell questions for today. I really enjoyed talking with you, Brother Eric, of course. It's been a pleasure. And wish we had more time, and we've had some good conversations. Looking forward to dive in. Let's get the bell out my way. Next week, please, 2 weeks, please tune in. We're going to be talking about political education. Why is it important? How are we connected to it? Or what is political education, right? So we're going to be really diving into that. Please send more questions. We love talking to you all. We love folks who've been tuning in. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Rocky. Thank you, John. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. And lastly, please find us at Black Yield on Instagram, Black Yield on Facebook as well, and Black Yield on Twitter. Peace.
See y'all in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Peace.